What is next for Josh Taylor and Jack Catterall? What is next for these two fighters? They had a rematch on the weekend, the 25th of May 2024. Why did they have a rematch? It wasn't for anything at all. It was just a rematch. Why? Well, 2 years prior, February 2022, Josh Taylor was the undisputed light welterweight champion and Jack Catterall was his WBO mandatory. How did we get to that point? Well, let's start with Josh Taylor. Josh Taylor, amateur Commonwealth gold medalist in 2014, turned pro 2015, and was with Cyclone Promotions. Barry McGuigan and his son Shane McGuigan was his trainer, and they fast-tracked him in the pro ranks in a sense where they got him up the IBF rankings till he got to his 15th fight. He was fighting Ivan Baranchyk for his IBF title, which is quite quick for your usual pro. They say usually that you're not ready for a title fight until 20 fights. But in this day and age, a lot of guys stay amateur for longer so they have more experience as boxers, come into the pros as experienced fighters and are fast tracked. And if they beat the appropriate guys, then they are considered contenders and they climb up the rankings if they can get themselves fights with ranked fighters. So he did this, beating enough ranked fighters to get to be IBF mandatory #1, fighting Ivan Baranchyk, beating Ivan Baranchyk, going on to having a unified title fight with who was considered the best 140-pounder. This is light welterweight. Who was considered the best light welterweight at that particular time, which was Regis Rougarou Prograis. He had the WBA title, but he also had this WBC Diamond Trinket title that I don't get these trinkets, but that's another video topic that we will touch on later on down the line. They had a very, very, very good fight. That was a very, very entertaining fight. Ebbs and flows, went this way, went that way. It was a very close fight. It was a majority decision victory. One ref had it a draw, the other two gave it to Josh, who then went on to fight Jose Ramirez, who was also unified champion with the WBC Real belt and the WBO belt. And he defeated him quite emphatically and became undisputed champion. At that particular time, Jack Catterall had a very, I would say, was underwhelming rise up the WBO rank. He signed to Frank Warren in 2014 after having probably 8-9 pro fights. Signed to Frank Warren in 2014, and he didn't get to fast track. He went through the good old traditional grassroots way of getting to a championship. Won the British light welterweight title against Tyrone Nurse in 2017 and went on to have significant fights to become the WBO mandatory. At this point, it got a bit sticky because he was supposed to fight Jose Ramirez for his title. But Jose Ramirez and Josh Taylor were trying to work out their undisputed fight. So ultimately, Jack Catterall decided to take a step-aside situation, whether it be step-aside money, but he allowed that fight to happen so that he could then fight for undisputed afterwards. Whoever wins everything, he's the next in line, and the WBO was next in line, and he would then be fighting for undisputed. Josh Taylor beats Jose Ramirez, and then Catterall versus Josh Taylor 1 happens. And it was a very close fight. I couldn't remember the fight properly, so I went back and watched the fight. And it was a scrappy affair, to be fair. It was very scrappy. I can understand how the judges didn't give it to him. It was very close. You could see that Josh Taylor had lost a step or two. Before this, Josh Taylor was going through guys, wiping them out, knocking out guys, a lot of knockdowns and stuff like that. He was very dominant in his fights before this. And in this fight, he was also trying to be dominant, but Jack Catterall had a good technique of being able to withstand the pressure and also be pressurizing himself. And in the midst of this close fight, there was a knockdown. So he knocked down Josh Taylor, so he had a 10-8 round somewhere in there. But the rest of the fight was really close. There was a lot of swing rounds, And when there is a fight with a lot of swing rounds, they usually get swung to either the house fighter, who's the fight is under his promotion, or the champion in this case, the undisputed champion in Josh Taylor. So in this case, Josh Taylor had both the titles and the promotion on his side. I can understand where some of those swing rounds, or most of them swing rounds, were given to Josh Taylor by the judges. I get it. Everyone was calling it robbery. It was a robbery. I didn't see it as a robbery per se. I actually had Jack Catterall. When I watched it the first time, I remember thinking that Jack Catterall just about won it. 1 point, if that. And that was only because the knockdown. I believe that if it wasn't for the knockdown, it would have been a draw. I didn't really see Josh Taylor as the winner, but I didn't see him as the real bad loser. I thought at best it was a draw. At worst, Jack Catterall won by a point. When the judges gave it to Josh Taylor, I understood. It made sense. Everyone's calling robbery, robbery, robbery. After which, Jack is calling for a rematch. Josh Taylor's like, you know what, I'll give you the rematch. But he had a few mandatories that he had to settle. And with that being said, when he wasn't looking to settle these mandatories, one by one, the belts got stripped from him, leaving him with the WBO. So the belts got stripped from him because he weren't willing to satisfy his mandatories. So the governing body said, oh, okay, you're not going to satisfy your mandatory, we're going to take the belt. So he ended up having one belt, which he said he's not going to just throw away. He will defend it against Teofimo Lopez. Now, this was the WBO title. He went in there to defend it against Teofimo Lopez, and Teofimo Lopez put a beating on him. Made him look old, made him look like this was the end for him, to be fair. But he's a gallant fighter, and he pressed on to the end and lost the fight subsequently on points. So now he's got no belt. He's got a loss on his record to Teofimo Lopez. And while this is happening, Jack Catterall ends his contract with Queensberry Promotions and joins Matchroom and Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn gets him a good couple fights in between. So it's from 2022 to 2024. Eddie got him 2 fights. He won both fights and stayed relevant. This time, Eddie Hearn is pushing for the rematch with Josh Taylor because it was a popular fight. And it was worthy of a rematch, in everyone's opinion. I agree, it was worthy of a rematch. They've had the rematch now on the weekend. And Jack Catterall won a lot more convincingly than he won the first fight. But the point of it for me is that there are no belts on the line. So he's just won his rematch and he's just got pride now. And it's 1-1. Josh Taylor's saying, let's have a rematch, let's have the third fight.
Did you feel you'd done enough?
Listen, I thought it was a great fight. Fair play to Jack. He boxed a better fight tonight. It was a better fight than the first fight. It was great. But listen, I thought I just nicked the fight, to be fair. It was a close fight, but given the controversy in the first fight, I think that's probably played into the judge's hands. But I think I just nicked the fight there, to be honest. But listen, fair play to Jack. He won the fight, and listen, let's do a third one. Why not? That was a good fight.
I was just asking Jack, because Eddie would said, look, he deserves his shot at a world title now. He was very well positioned before this fight, but do you think that's the biggest fight now for both of you to run this back, and do you think that's the fair thing to do?
Well, listen, if he wants to go on and challenge for bigger fights, he deserves it. He won the fight, but I think that's one apiece. So let's do a trilogy.
In all honesty, when I watched him I didn't see the fight. I saw the highlights. I'm not going to give you no breakdown. You can't break down the highlights. I just know what happened, and I know that he won. I want to see the full fight to see how dominant he was. But from the reports I'm hearing, Jack Catterall was quite dominant. He won it by at least 2 rounds. It was like a 7-5 Jack Catterall. Bob Arum, by the way, was not happy. He's come all the way over with his 90-odd-year-old self, flown over from America to come and watch this fight and support his fighter, Josh Taylor, which is admirable of him. I don't think he needs to be doing all them long-haul flights at this age, but that's his business. He's doing what he wants to do. And he gets in the ring afterwards, grabs the mic.
Scorecards were a disgrace, were an absolute disgrace. And I really feel sorry for Josh. I thought he won the fight, but those scorecards were ridiculous. And that's the lesson. I will never, ever allow an American fighter to come here with this British board scoring the fight. Those scores were ridiculous.
All this stuff. The cards read 117, 111 twice and 116, 113, which suggests that Jack Catterall just dominated the fight and won a lot of rounds. I mean, I haven't seen the fight. I have to go back and watch the fight to give my assessment, but that does seem quite wide to me. But anyway, I digress. At the same time, it doesn't matter. The results happened. Everyone's accepted the result, and Josh is asking for a rematch. When he was in there asking for a rematch, he kind of looked like he was begging it. Like, please give me a rematch type of thing. He didn't say please, but he just looked like he was saying please, if you get me. So anyway, what should happen? Eddie's talking about pushing him forward to go and fight for a title. Who's got the titles? You got Devin Haney. He's got the WBC title. Teofimo Lopez got the WBO title. A guy from Mexico called Isaac Cruz. He's got the WBA title. And a Donny from Puerto Rico. His name Subriel Matias. He has the IBF. Now, Subriel Matias, he's actually taken a life in the ring before. He is devastating as a puncher, but he's not very popular. So that's the least lucrative fight of the 4 champions. Isaac Cruz is a new champion. His claim to fame is losing to Tank at lightweight. Losing to Tank gallantly. He didn't get knocked out apparently. Tank broke his hand on Isaac Cruz's head, and then he couldn't really throw any power punches at the end after that. But Cruz couldn't do enough to win the fight, even though Tank had a broken hand. So I'm not really too sure how great Cruz is. He won the title by beating Rolly Romero, who is not a good fighter. I'll tell you that now. Rolly Romero, happenstance, became champion. But that's another story. Teofimo Lopez, on the other hand, I do rate highly. Very slick. He's got more of a boxer puncher style. And although at this time and at this stage in his career, it is a limited boxer puncher where he likes to counter more so than attack. He looks a bit vulnerable when he does attack. Case in point, his loss against George Kambosos. He was coming forward and he wasn't very effective as much as he wanted to be. His most effective attack is counter-attacking. So that's Teofimo Lopez, and Devin Haney is your pugilist specialist, the boxer that likes to dodge raindrops. He wants to walk in the rain and don't get wet. He wants to get in that ring and never be touched, but do all of the damage without taking any damage. Considered not a heavy puncher, just had a loss against Ryan Garcia. We know the stuff, what's going on with that, but he is the WBC champion. And if we look on the rankings, Jack Catterall is very high on all of the governing body's top 10 lists. What do we think he should do? Should he have the 3rd fight with Josh Taylor, or should he chase a champion? Will he get a fight with a champion? He's with Matchroom. Devin Haney would be the easiest because Devin Haney is like a free agent. He's got his own promotional company, but he works a lot with Eddie Hearn. Teofimo Lopez is with Top Rank, which is a bit sketchy because him and Bob is having a little bit of like a lover's tiff type thing. So I don't know what's happening there, but we've just heard Bob Arum say he's never going to allow another one of his fighters to fight in the UK. That's fine, because where Teofimo Lopez is a champion, I would expect Jack Catterall to actually go over to America and fight under the Top Rank banner with Teofimo Lopez for that fight, if that happens. And then you got Subriel Matias. Now, Subriel Matias is on his own path. He wants to unify titles and he wants to be undisputed. But when we look at the IBF rankings, he's ranked number 3. Number 2 has no ratings, it says. But Richardson Hitchens, who is also a matchroom fighter, is number 1. Jack Catterall is number 2. So maybe they could fight in an eliminator to see who goes on to fight Subriel Matias. So that's that. So when we look at these rankings and the WBC situation, we've got Jack Catterall at number 5. Now, Devin Haney is said to be fighting Sandor Martin as a title defense because Sandor Martin is the number 1 mandatory. You got Gary Antoine Russell, which is Gary Russell Jr.'s brother, younger brother. He's at number 2. Dalton Smith, he's at number 3. And then you got Richardson Hitchens and then Jack Catterall. In the WBA, Jack Catterall again is number 5. Regis Prograis is number 4. Then you got a few people. Nestor Bravo, never heard of him. Alberto Puello is at number 2. Kenneth Sims. I've never heard of Kenneth Sims. He's at number 1. Richardson Hitchens, as we said, is the IBF number 1. Jack Catterall is the IBF number 2, effectively, because there is not a number 3. I don't understand how they do that. I don't understand how it's not rated. Why not just put Jack Catterall 3, Regis Prograis 4, and so on and so forth? That doesn't make sense to me. But that's fine. That's another story. Teofimo Lopez, obviously WBO champion, and Jack's number 6 down there. Josh Taylor is above him, who he's just beaten. Sandor Martin is supposed to be fighting Devin Haney. Jose Ramirez, we don't know what's going on with Jose Ramirez. Richardson Hitchens is number 2. Arnold Barboza, very good fighter, is at number 1 with the WBO. He's been chasing Teofimo Lopez for a few years, to be fair. Teofimo Lopez kind of seems like he doesn't want to fight this guy for some reason. I don't know why. I won't say he's scared. I don't think any boxers are particularly scared of any other boxer. So there's a reason for him not wanting. I believe that he believes that Arnold Barboza is beneath him. He's better than that. But at the end of the day, if you've got to fight your mandatory, you've got to fight your mandatory. That's how it goes. This is how it goes. What should Jack do? Should he chase these titles, or should he have the rematch? Personally, I think he should have the rubber match, go for the 3rd fight, make it a trilogy. There's money in the fight. While these guys are sorting out their mandatories and so forth, you're not numb. If you can get a title eliminator with Richardson Hitchens, maybe do that. Maybe do that if you can get that title eliminator. But that's the closest you are to the IBF right now. Right, but I think they done him wrong. I think he was hard done by. At the same time, I only think he was hard done by because at the time when he then had the rematch with Josh Taylor, he hadn't kept any of them belts. All of them had gone. So then he's just fighting Josh Taylor in a rematch for basically bragging rights, right? But I don't believe that he done the utmost enough to say he clearly won the first fight. So in all honesty, that's how it goes. Now that he's here, what should he do? As for Josh Taylor, if he doesn't get the rematch, should he retire or should he go upstairs to welterweight? Welterweight is kind of a barren land at the moment, with Errol Spence Jr., Terence Crawford both moving up to super welterweight. Welterweight is left to Boots Ennis and the others that are down there that don't really have a name. Josh Taylor might do himself a favour not boiling down to that weight anymore, adding the extra 7 pounds and fighting at that weight class. He might regain some dominance and he might regain some vigour and a bit more energy. So that might be a better weight class for him. Or he may retire. He's not a spring chicken. He is 33 years old. And he's not a young 33. He's had some battles in there. In his little 21 fights, he's had some battles. He's fought top quality fighters. He hasn't really fought anybody with a losing record. The only time he fought someone with a losing record was his 3rd fight. And even in his 2nd fight, he was fighting somebody that had already had 22 fights and had 5 losses, 17 wins. So he was fighting guys with a winning record from early out. And he's continued and he's taken a good 7 O's. He's taken 7 O's of man that's got more fights than him. Ramirez was 26-0. The first Jack Catterall was 26-0. Regis Prograis was 24-0. Baranchik was 19-0. Ryan Martin was 22-0. Victor Postal was 29-1, but he only lost to, at that point, Terence Crawford, which is not something to be ashamed of. So he's been having hard fights from the very beginning. So is it time to retire? 33 years old. But he might want to fight on. He might still have the fire in his belly. If he does have the fire in his belly still, he doesn't get the rematch, what should he do? Let's talk about it in the comment section. Thanks for listening, and I will see you in the next video.